This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you by Ministering to Youth Conference. Imagine for a moment that you are surrounded by mountains next to a peaceful stream in the cool air of the fall. It's hard to imagine a better place. But what if that place was filled with other people who had the same mission that you do? People focused on helping the youth of today live out their faith in Christ. That place is M2Y, the Ministering to Youth Conference, located at the Mainstay Suites in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, on November 4th through the 7th. You will be surrounded by youth ministers, elders, deacons, preachers, youth volunteers, and parents that all have a common goal: ministering to youth. This year, the theme is Renew. The keynote speakers are Dan Chambers and Spencer Furby, along with several other class teachers who will be tackling subjects on mental health, technology, self-care, navigating culture, and so much more. Go to m2yconference.com to register or benandtravis.com/m2y for more information. Travis and I hope to see you there. Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor podcast with Ben and Travis. We are thankful that you are joining in with us wherever you're at today and listening in. We're excited to be here and to bring another episode that we feel like is going to have some helpful information and maybe a little bit of humor. And then what's that other one? Healing along the way. So Travis, how's it going today for you?
Man, I'm great. I like when we have celebrities on, and so we've certainly got one of those with us today. But I'm doing great, ready to go in the fall break, ready for that nice little break. My kids are not here; they're with their grandmother right now. So, man, it's been a party around the Creasy household this weekend, aka doing nothing all the way.
I think we are all in the same boat there. I've got my kids are up at grandparents. Your kids are at grandparents. I believe our guests' kids are somewhere. I don't know if they're with grandparents or what, but so we'll go ahead and tell you who we've got on today. As Travis mentioned, some celebrity status. We have LB Watkins, or as some people know her, Loni Beth Watkins. And if you recognize the first part of that name, she is the daughter of Lonnie Jones. We've had him on the podcast on many occasions. Please don't hold that against her because she's got a lot of great things. She is also the daughter of Jackie Jones. That's the part that makes her especially special. I think Travis is now working with Jackie a little bit up at Riverside. But Loni Beth is the wife of Tyler Watkins, who they both work at Christian Heritage School, I believe in Dalton, Georgia. And she works there with Student Life, which sounds phenomenal. And he is the head basketball coach. And she's also got a photographer. She does a fantastic job with photography. I love to see her pictures that get posted every so often. But Loni Beth, or LB, we are super excited to have you with us today.
Thanks. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, this is a good experience for us. We've already said, as we were talking a little bit before we came on the air, that we wanted to get, we'll probably get some information about your parents before it's all over with, try to get some things that we might can use against them. But then again, we know what Lonnie and Jackie are capable of, so we may not go there too much. But we are really thankful that you are with us and have joined in with us. And so we wanted to kind of start off with just asking you a couple of things. I know that we've talked some about some of your struggles and the things that have gone on in the past, but share with us, if you would, as we begin, a little bit about your struggles in school when you were younger.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly what age I would say I was diagnosed, but I have a learning disability in math and language arts. I'm more so in the math scale that is just complete and utter Chinese to me. I don't understand it. I don't get it. But I think at an early age, I was coming home and doing 3-4 hours of homework, crying, just nothing made sense. It was difficult. And obviously that was eons ago, so I don't necessarily remember all the conversations had at that early age. But I do know that my parents reached out to the teachers and were like, hey, are you seeing these things in the classroom? And I think they were kind of just met with, no, she's just, she's loud, she's talkative. Like, there's nothing wrong with her. She's just being lazy. And so I don't think my parents swept it under the rug, but it was like, okay, we're just going to have to do extra work at home, and just try to kind of cross some hurdles. It didn't really affect me until my 7th grade year. My parents decided it would probably be best to go ahead and pull me out for the year and do homeschool for a solid year, just to be able to get my grades up, for me to do some full, really understanding. And I think at that moment in my life, I thought that was probably the worst decision, as a 7th grader, preteen. What are you doing? You're taking me away from my kids. Obviously now as a mom, I can see the bigger picture, and I definitely thank them for that now. So Dad actually homeschooled me that entire year, because Mom was teaching full time, so she couldn't, stay home and help me. And so, Dad would get up, make breakfast every morning. He did that anyway, but, then we would just get right into it. And there were a lot of tears and distress, but we made it through. Then I think they felt like I was ready to go back. So I went back my 8th grade year, finished out, and then went on into high school. And I think in high school, the academics are a little more rigorous at that point. And so I started noticing more and more where sitting in the classroom setting, taking notes and doing other things, it wasn't really comprehending like it should. And so I would go and try to ask, raise my hand or whatever. And the teacher would be like, we just said it. Like, why do you not understand that? And I was really met with, you're just not listening. You're not paying attention. You're, again, you're being lazy, which lazy is not in my, wheelhouse. I'm very not lazy. If anything, I'm overactive. So I went home and, kind of was like, my teachers won't help me. They won't give me any support. I don't really know what to do. And so again, it was just kind of Mom and Dad would go and talk to the counselors and the teachers and just say, hey, we have an issue. We don't think that she needs to be in LD classes per se, but we do need some extra accommodations. And they just would never meet us. And so fast forward to my senior year, I had a really excellent volleyball career in high school and in the club atmosphere. And I actually signed a Division I scholarship to play at Troy University. And graduation exams were coming up, and I'd passed everything but the math. I couldn't pass the math, and my scholarship was on the line at that point. And so that's when my dad kind of came in, and to some people, he's sweet and not intimidating. He went in full daddy bear and, just said, listen, this girl has worked her tail off to get this scholarship. She's 4'10". She should not be doing this. This is a miracle within itself. But now, she has an opportunity to go a full ride, get her entire school paid for, and you're the only ones in the way. Help us out, kind of deal. So kind of gave them an ultimatum at that point. And so they're like, fine, whatever will appease this dad. I get, Travis, you're in the school system. Sometimes you just have to appease a parent just to get them off your back. So I feel like that's what they did. But then when it came back,
it's impressive that they were managed to get him off their back, because there's a lot of people who've wrestled with Lonnie that have probably had a hard time getting him off their back.
Yeah. I think at that point he would probably say he would have probably been ready to fight anybody at that point. But so we go take the necessary tests that they needed to see. Obviously, you don't ever want to pass those with flying colors, but I passed them with flying colors, and they were like, "Oh, you are right." And we're like, "Oh, well, we've only been trying to tell you this since kindergarten." Like,
oh, wow.
Hello. And so right then and there, we got the, special accommodations I needed. Then we got it into, we got to Troy. We got my coaches involved in that. So I got special accommodations my first year at Troy. I was on academic probation for the first 6 months. So in a byline of the contract, it was, if you don't make these certain grades by this time, you will lose your ride and you will be kicked out of school. And so that was kind of an added pressure of, this is a big deal. I need to stay on my studies and go to study hall and do that. And by the grace of God, literally, I passed 3 months earlier than expected to pass that milestone. And this was while playing, full time, traveling, weeks at a time, flying on planes, doing all the, Division I NCAA stuff. And I was still able to do it just by adding those, extra 30 minutes to test, or just having someone read something out loud to me, or, just having some extra accommodations. I think school would have been a whole different experience for me if I had had that sooner. So
yeah,
that's kind of a generalized story.
Yeah, I remember talking with your dad about that several years ago, because my son had some of the same situation. We'd come home 4 hours, doing homework, and we went to one school system. We were at one school system, and for several years we said, hey, can we get him tested? Can we figure out something? Never would. And we finally got over to Mars Hill, where we're at now, and they tested him, and they found he needed accommodations. And it's been huge. I'm not saying you're old, because you're way younger than us, but it's been a few years ago. Do you think that things have improved any in those areas, or do you think a lot of people still are facing this struggle in the school systems?
I think to a certain extent, I definitely believe in the public school system. I'm not an advocate for public or private, but I definitely do think it's more prevalent in the public school arenas, just because, they're managing 30 to 40 kids in a classroom at a time. They're being met with state guidelines that are absolutely ridiculous and impossible. Yeah. And then you throw in COVID, the kids who really need one-on-one time, and then they're having to go home and do virtual or every other day in the classroom. I would not have handled that well at all. I think where I work, especially at Christian Heritage, we do a really good job with really helping meeting the needs of our students at an early age. We have this really cool program in kindergarten. So if you're still not meeting the basic needs a kindergarten should do before they go off to first grade, they can choose to stay back, and we call it pre-first. And they're still with other kindergartners, but they do a different academic realm, more focused for what they're missing. But we also have a great system. We call it the Pinnacle, where kids can go in, and if they need to do like a dynamic learning set where they're sitting on a ball, bouncing and watching a screen, taking a test, we can provide that for them. And I just think that that's a great outlet. But I really do think that parents constantly struggle with this. And I don't think that we have a ton of people in the education system, private or public, that are really equipped. And so I think it's really hard, not only for the kids, but for the parents too. So
what would you suggest parents, if they are going through those struggles every night, if they're going through some of those things, what would your suggestion be for them to do? I think patience. I don't know that I could have patience when I do that with my children. So I don't know if that's blasphemy or, speaking off the cuff, but I think my parents had great patience with me and understood that I was different with certain things. I viewed schoolwork differently. I can see geometry, but I cannot put the numbers with the geometry. I can see and flip shapes in my head, but I just can't work it out on the paper. So I think being very patient and understanding and trying to understand what your kid's trying to tell you. And I know some parents may say, oh, this, you can do it. I think taking a step back and saying, okay, show me what you are seeing. I think that was the biggest thing I always heard my parents say. How are you seeing this? And so then it would be like, okay, well, I see this, or in a sense, I can't spell to save my life. And what's weird is I've always called it kind of the Rain Man effect, but spelling or even talking, I can see letters and numbers kind of like flying through and kind of like piecing together. I don't know if that makes sense. Wow. It's weird, but that's kind of how I process things. So like sitting down and reading a book, it'll take me 30 minutes to read a page, because it's like,
I have to go back and read it, or while I'm reading it, I'm imagining the scene, and then I get lost in that scene, and I'm like, oh, where am I at? I kind of make it a reality. And so people who are really smart and analytical don't necessarily understand the creative side of that too, with a learning disability. So I think just patience and trying to understand kind of the kid's viewpoint, which can be hard. But I think that would help.
So when it comes to like dealing with the schools, I know like for us, and I know your dad pushed this, I'm sure your mom too pushed this, and I had to push this a little bit. And I've had to I've shared with, because I work with a school now, and I've shared with some parents, like when they come and they go, I just don't understand. I said, well, one of the first steps in that, obviously, besides talking to the teachers and the principal, whoever, counselor, whoever may be there, the other part of that is you can ask for testing to be done.
Right.
And, they can get that, and they should. Now, I don't know, it probably depends on the school system where you're at, but I mean, you should be able to get that ball rolling as a parent to say, I believe that there's something here, comprehension, learning, some sort of learning disability that may be there. Now, I know we were talking with Will a little bit earlier, that's sometimes hard for parents to really come to that conclusion that there is, but everybody learns differently. There's nothing about LB that says, that you're any less intelligent than anyone. In fact, probably way more intelligent than all the rest of the guys on this combined. But it's just the way you learn is different, and helping parents understand that.
Yeah. And I think parents being not backing down either. I think if my parents, which is not in my parents' nature, but I think if they had backed down, I don't think I'd be where I'm at today. I don't think I would have finished high school, honestly. So I think the parents need to be confident and say, no, I know my kid. They may do some things different in a school setting, but you're not home. You don't see my kid 24/7. There's something wrong. And I think, and it's sad that the parents have to push and push and push school districts to help. But I think with the parents staying on top of it and not letting it go and just saying, no, there's a problem. We need help. This is why you're here. Help us is very important, and fight for your kids.
It's ultimately your response, as a parent, it's our responsibility to make sure that our kids get what they need. Yeah. So, pushing that.
You're their advocate. You're the only, advocate they have in the world. Obviously, you got grandparents and extra folks, but you're the one who knows them, and that's the thing. I think that if you're a parent that doesn't ever complain about anything, and then you come in with this, that also makes it a lot easier too. Not saying that there aren't other problems that need to be fixed, but from a teacher standpoint, I know. I've got, I guess my largest class, I've got 20 something kids, and it's like, it's overwhelming to try and hit all of them on their level of teaching, but you got to try, and it's a lot easier to come in and just go, oh, blanket, this is what we're going to do. Everybody's going to be successful at it. And, that just doesn't work. That's one of the shortcomings. Obviously, schooling the way we have it is a necessity to some degree. But, to at least recognize, and I think that most teachers probably do, that, this isn't for everybody. And I'm a little slower learner than everybody else. But I think you nailed it. I think it's just patience, but also being assertive.
Hey, that's tough, because I had a different learning style than what my son did. And so Kenya sort of understood that more than I did. And a lot of times I would lose my mind trying to sit there, because I was going, it's right there, And so, once he had the testing, we understood that, it's not that he doesn't understand it. It's that he, the reading was a comprehension issue. And they, it was as simple as cutting his homework in half. It wasn't like he wasn't doing the work. It was just, hey, we know he's getting it once he sees it. But it's having to sit and read 100 questions or however many questions was slowing him down. And so just, cut it in half and get some help taking tests and things like that. But it was just a different way of learning.
There's a great, and I'll have to look up the exact verbiage, but there is I worked with a principal for a few years, and right off the bat, meeting her when I first started at Christian Heritage, we were having a conversation and she looked at me and she goes, are you dyslexic? Do you have a learning disability? And I was like, I do. How would you know that? Like, you don't know me from Adam. Like, this is literally kind of like the first introduction. And she was really great and perceptive, but her daughter was kind of the same way with me. And she said when they were trying to get her daughter tested, the testing person, whatever they call them, he said, I'm going to give you a sentence. And it was like the cow jumped over the moon wearing a blue shirt. And so he asked, that girl, what do you read to me this sentence? What do you see? And kind of broke it down and then had her mom and dad do the same thing. And one's a lawyer, she's a teacher, and then you have their daughter. And it was all different things where the daughter would see the cow. She put him in a blue shirt and had daisies in the field. And the fence that he jumped over was brown. And she created this entire scene, whereas the mom read the sentence, did the punctuation, did what she was supposed to do. And then the dad, the lawyer, very analytical, was just like, he jumped over the fence or the moon or whatever it was. And it was like, see, you see it this way, she sees it this way. It's all correct, but it's a different way to get there. And so it's a cool little fun technique to do. And she did that with me years ago. And I was like, hey, that makes sense. So I'll have to look that up and email that to you guys for y'all to do it. It's cool.
Well, and for you, that makes total sense for you because you're a photographer and you see things that other people don't see, and that's the beautiful thing about photography is, there's just, you're able to see what you want that to look like, how you want people to be set up, and you do, senior portraits and you do all kinds of weddings and all sorts of stuff, or at least you have in the past. So, that actually suits you well, in that area.
My fear as a teacher is school turns into, and it's this way anyways, to some degree.
Right.
I'm just trying to get through it. Let's just get through it. Let's get the math done. Let's get through it.
Right.
When it really shouldn't be that way. It should be, and a part of that is sometimes we teach to pass the test. We're not really teaching to, you find your passion in life. Yeah. And, we work with your dad in the skit group, and he comes in and he's got crazy vision that none of the rest of us would ever see. And it's because that's the way his mind works. It's the same thing for you. It's the same thing for all of us as we work on this podcast. Somebody comes in, they got this idea, and you're like, man, that's awesome. And I think that sometimes as a teacher, my fear is we're just trying to get through the day or get them through school. And, some days are like that. It's just going to be the way it is. But man, how much greater would our learning be if it was, and the tests would take care of themselves.
Correct.
If we could, a little bit more try to meet people where they are. And that's difficult for me because I like lecture and I like writing notes down, but that is not everybody's bag. And so I've worked myself out of that to some degree. I still do it.
But writing notes for me in lectures was really hard because I couldn't spell. So I'd get focused on, oh God, I don't know this word. And then I would sit there and harbor on it. And then I would miss 10 bullet points that I needed to have. And it's like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Well, I sit next to your dad in conferences and he draws the entire time, which I do too. And that's how we listen. There's a passage, Titus 3:14 has become one of my favorite. Our people must learn to engage in good deeds to meet pressing needs so that they won't be unfruitful. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about is knowing the needs of the students, meeting those needs, helping them to succeed in the areas that they can. And I know I've heard Kenya talk a lot about, I finished high school because of sports. She said, I wanted to play, and she went to play, at Freed Hardeman, played softball, but she had played volleyball, softball, basketball. She was very involved in it. And she said, I made, I did school to play sports. And I know you did the same thing, and which is intriguing. And somebody may have missed this along the way, but you said you played D1 volleyball, but you are 4'10".
I'm 4'10".
Let that sink in, folks. She played D1 volleyball. I mean, live your dreams. I mean, that's amazing. Now, if I remember correctly, you were a libero, right?
Yeah, or the DS. So at Troy, I was strictly the DS. We already had a libero. And then I did transfer out of Troy after my freshman year, and God pulled me to Shorter University, where that's a fun story too. I just felt a tug. There was just I was just not settled or grounded at Troy like I thought I was going to be. And I came home at Christmas and I was like, Dad, I don't know. I just feel something's harboring. I don't understand it. I'm going to just go take a drive. I was familiar with Rome, Georgia for Barry, because my dad had worked on the bowl course up there. Beautiful campus. I didn't know much about Shore, but I was like, you know what? I'm home for Christmas. Just going to go take a drive for the day. I took a high school friend, got to Shorter Christmas time. No one's on campus. The security guard's like, sure, just, tour around, get out. Most of the buildings will be locked, but, you can at least just look around. I was like, okay, cool. We drive to the gym. The gym happened to be unlocked. And I walked in. It's called the Winthrop King Center. Walked in the doors and literally ran smack into the volleyball coach, who I knew through high school. And at that moment, it was like, he was like, LB, what are you doing here? And I was like, well, I don't really know, but I think I've got my sign. I think I should come play ball for you. And I was like, I don't need money. I don't want to take anybody's position. Do you think I could just kind of walk on, do my degree, play ball, kind of stay fit, but I really do feel like God's calling me here? And he was like, oh, absolutely. And then a couple months down the road, he calls me and said, hey, guess what? I'm going to pay for your school. And so I got my school paid for again. And then
bingo
was there, had an incredible experience at Shorter. And then that's where I met Tyler. So ultimately my dad and I joked that God was dragging me to Shorter. Like even after I graduated Shorter, I had to move home for a period of time because I couldn't find a job. Dad of all people could not find me a job for a full year. No one would hire me. And then all of a sudden I get a job back at Shorter working on the development advancement team. And so it just kind of felt like God was always pulling me towards there. And I have an incredible life now because of that. And because I felt like I listened to that calling. So that was really cool. And I still got to do my dream, play volleyball, but I also got to listen to God, and that he led me to my husband, and it's just great.
So if somebody's listening, just for the volleyball parents out there, I've been, my daughter's been playing for a little while, and some of the 5th and 6th grade girls are coming in and they're like, why is she wearing a different colored jersey? What is that all about? So, and then I'll tell them libero and they'll go, I don't know what that means. So explain what a libero is. And then for my sake, I don't know what a DS is. So explain what those two things are.
So libero is, I think in Spanish, it means free. So they're just a free-for-all sub. They run back and forth on the back row. They just play defense. They serve. They're pretty much should be a solid point in your team. They're almost like a team captain. They see everything that's going on. And if you don't have a strong libero, you're probably not going to have a strong team. Just as like if your setter and libero don't vibe, you're probably not going to have a really strong team. But a DS is a defensive specialist, and it's kind of the same thing. We just have to wear the same jersey as everybody else, and we can't just run in and out for people, but we kind of do the same thing.
Generally play the back row most
Correct.
of the time.
Yes.
I've watched Division I volleyball, and it's terrifying. I don't want no part of that, right? I played football, but I'm telling you, I watched that, man. It's intimidating. I watch high school volleyball, and I hold my breath the whole time. I hope that I don't get in trouble for this connection, but Shorter College. I mean,
Lonnie received a lot of grief over his sticker on the back of his truck for a little while, I believe.
But he also had a shirt that said Shorter University.
That's awesome.
And we went out to eat one night after a game, and the waitress was like, "That's funny," and he's like, "No, this is a real place. Like this is real. Like my daughter plays there. Like this is real. This is real." So people would always get a big kick out of that, but everyone always loved Dad at volleyball games. There are many pictures in the gym when I was there of Dad standing there like, with his big Shorter shirt on. It was hilarious.
with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. Until next time, look for us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.